We're handing out awards today. Which Colts player could break out, be named MVP or Rookie of the Year? Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it?
Gametime. Sorry, I was on mute.
That's
Game
right.
time. Game time.
Yeah, I'm texting your timing already. So what's up, everybody? This is Jake Arthur and Zach Hicks of HorseshoeHuddle.com. I'm your resident credentialed media member, and Zach is the hardest working film guy in the biz. And today we are continuing our build up to the beginning of the regular season. It is officially week 1 now, but we're going to kind of continue our predictions for how we see this thing going. And today we're talking awards. Are there any Colts coaches, front office executives, players, all included, that could take home any national awards? And then we'll go over offense and defense, who we think, MVP, Rookie of the Year, Breakout Players, stuff like that. And we'll let you guys know what we think on that. This will be a great interactive episode for you guys in the comments throughout the show to tell us who you think the winners of each of these will be. So how we're going to do this first, we'll go over several candidates for the Colts of players, coaches, again, front office guys who could win national awards. And we'll say, which might be most likely. So we'll go ahead and I guess start at the top of the head here. Executive of the Year, Chris Ballard. How likely do you think that could be, Zach?
So I don't think it's very likely. Mainly, I think when I look at this award, it's the executives who, for lack of a better term, do a lot in the offseason.
Do stuff?
I mean, I realized as I was saying that how it was going to sound when I actually said it, but the only way I could see this happening for Ballard is if both A.D. Mitchell and Laiatu Latu are competing for their respective Rookie of the Year awards. Because those were his most significant moves this offseason, were getting those guys. Maybe if Richardson goes down and Flacco has an MVP season, but we don't even want to talk about that. Because he didn't bring in any other outside guys. So when they look at that award, it's typically winning teams and how draft picks performed and how free agent signings performed on winning teams. So it would really have to take a special season from Laiatu Latu and A.D. Mitchell for Ballard to really compete for this award. But I don't really see it happening, especially because it'd be one thing if the Colts were a 2-win team and then they turned it around to being a 12-win team and those rookies were going off, then you're a lock for the award because that's just how it happens. I don't see the Colts were a 9-win team last year. I don't see, even if they get up to 10 or 11 this year, I don't see that being enough for Ballard to have a chance at this award. So I would say it's very unlikely Chris Ballard gets Executive of the Year. Although I will say this, and I know our comment section would agree, if the Colts secondary for whatever reason somehow is fantastic this year, they're a top 5 secondary in football, top 10 secondary in football, give him the award because he's the only one who trusted it. So give him the award if that somehow happens. But outside of that happening, I don't see him really competing for this kind of award this year.
No, I think you're right. I don't think there has been enough movement for there to be impact, but the few notable ones he's made, they have to absolutely hit it out of the park. Next up, this one seems a lot more likely. Shane Steichen for Coach of the Year.
Again, I think he's going to be hindered a little bit by the fact that they won 9 games last year, because typically Coach of the Year award goes to who brought a team out of the gutter to being good. That's why he was 3rd or 4th in it last year, because he took that putrid 2022 Colts team into being a 9-win team with a backup quarterback. And honestly, if they win the division last year, he probably has a good chance at getting that award. So the Colts would probably have to jump up to being the 1 or 2 seed in the AFC for him to have a chance at this award, which isn't outside the realm of possibility, but it's probably unlikely. But I would certainly call this more likely than Chris Ballard getting Executive of the Year, because if Richardson clicks, like if Richardson figures it out by like week 5 or 6 this year and goes on like a Jordan Love type tear, people are going to be looking at Shane Steichen as like the quarterback whisperer in football, and which could lead to him getting this. So certainly more likely than Chris Ballard getting Executive of the Year, but I don't think it's super likely either when it comes to this award. It'll be some team that turns around from like 4 wins to 10 wins or something like that.
Right. I think the Colts would have to be absolutely dominating, or again, Flacco would have to be in there and they'd get in the playoffs, like something like that. And again, we don't want to talk about that.
Not worth it. Not worth the trade-off.
No. So I don't know what the betting odds on these are, but to us, this seems kind of even. Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, either player for Offensive Player of the Year. I don't want to throw NFL MVP in it yet. Obviously, both of these guys are plenty of competition for the Colts offensive MVP. But let's just say NFL Offensive Player of the Year. What do you think on that?
Look, Jake, I love the optimism. I love the optimism here. Look, when it comes to a quarterback who has the dual threat ability of Anthony Richardson, it's always a possibility that they could turn the corner and go crazy. So you can't say like, no, I think it's too early for Richardson, obviously, to hit that this year. And then when it comes to Jonathan Taylor getting Offensive Player of the Year, it really would have to be better than what he did in 2021, which I don't know if that's even feasibly possible for a running back, because he didn't even win it then. You know, he didn't even win Offensive Player. He was like second behind Cooper Kupp then, who had a historic season as well. So again, this is probably the most unlikely is them. But when it comes to Richardson, you know, you could see him stacking enough touchdowns to where there's a case for some kind of awards or Pro Bowls for him because of that red zone rushing ability. But again, these are the ones we're knocking out the top that are probably not as likely. The next two we're going to mention probably seem a little bit more likely for the Colts.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right. So speaking of Anthony Richardson, Comeback Player of the Year, could there be 2 Colts quarterbacks on there? And Andrew Luck, you could throw that in there as well.
Here's the thing. Comeback Player of the Year is the goofiest award in NFL award season because there's no standard for it. So they're
trying to make it that way after Joe got it over to Mario.
Right. Well, because here's the thing. Richardson wouldn't be coming back to anything. You know, he would just be like, he'd be in the NFL at this point. So it's a weird case to make for Richardson. I think he's going to be firmly behind Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers for this award. But again, it takes one big season, and then this is a goofy award where they would probably consider giving it to him. So this is definitely more likely than the other 3 we mentioned, but you know, maybe it's something that you put like $1 on just to see if Richardson can have that fantastic season and win the award.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, if he, with the shoulder injury, obviously you only got the 4 games from him, but if he's accumulating like 4,500 yards of offense overall and gets the 35 touchdowns we talked about yesterday, like I could see that being in the conversation. Obviously, Offensive Player of the Year as well. But this one, which seems the most likely because it's literally the betting favorite right now, Laiatu Latu for Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at Defensive Rookie of the Year, it typically goes to edge rushers or cornerbacks. That's essentially where it goes to every time. Sometimes linebackers get in there too because people love the tackle stats, but we are starting to move away from linebackers getting the award. It typically goes to pass rushers or corners, and Laiatu Latu, the top defender taken in the draft, probably the most NFL-ready player, defensive player taken in the draft. So I think he's the overwhelming favorite. He's going to get a lot of snaps with the Colts. And yeah, I mean, if he hits like 7.5, 8, 8.5, 9 sacks, whatever it's going to be, like somewhere in that range, he's probably going to get the award. So yeah, I think Laiatu Latu, it's probably not a great bet because you want to bet on more like people down the line so you can actually win more money. But I think if you were just playing the odds right now in terms of any Colts player being up for awards this season, Laiatu Latu, Defensive Rookie of the Year, is very realistic. He has a great shot at it. He's a really strong young player. And I think he can have a fantastic rookie season and kind of earn that award. So I think this is the Colts' best chance at a Rookie of the Year award since, you know, the Shaquille Leonard year, obviously back in 2018 when he won it. He seems the most primed and ready for that year one explosion compared to a lot of the projects that Ballard has taken in the past.
Yeah, and I think obviously with Samson Ebukham's injury, that opens the door for more playing time, and just rushing next to DeForest Buckner, we've now seen what it looks like, and that could be pretty productive for both players. So if I had to put money on any of them, I think Latu being defensive rookie of the year would be my choice. So coming up, we're going to look, a little bit closer just at the team itself in general rather than the NFL landscape. But who's going to be, the Colts offensive MVP, rookie of the year, and breakout star? You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Well, we got something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Go place your bets on some of these things we're talking about now. Season awards. You can go out for week 1 Colts Texans. You could say, what's the over-under on Anthony Richardson's passing yardage. But what I do know is this YouTube TV setup is great. I was somewhere over the weekend, actually. Someone had 4 college games going on, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is sweet. This is worth it. So I have personally seen it, and I can tell you that it's a pretty good setup. So just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook.
And guys, the new Locked On NFL is here. Locked On NFL is now 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then stops by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, Jake, so we're going a little more realistic now with our final 2 segments. We're not talking in the broad landscape of the NFL awards for this Colts team. We're talking purely for the micro level of the Colts. We're starting with offense, the MVP on offense, the rookie of the year on offense, and the breakout player on offense. Let's start with MVP, Jake. Who do you have as the MVP of this Colts offense this season?
Yeah, so I think the easiest choice is probably Anthony Richardson, but I think the biggest linchpin for the Colts' success and the guy who they'd probably be really, really hurt without is Jonathan Taylor. So I'll say that it's Taylor as the MVP. I think whether it's Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco in there, if something were to happen to Anthony, they're only going to go as far as Taylor helps them go. I mean, Anthony obviously has that special playmaking ability, and they can probably weather some storms, but this really is his first year starting. So we don't know what that looks like over a full year. But Jonathan Taylor, I think they have huge plans for him this year. They just gave him that really big contract last year. So we can bet, throughout the duration of that contract, especially this first full year of it, they're going to use the guy as much as possible. And for Anthony, who's a guy who's going to have to learn on the fly and everything, a strong running game and a strong partner like that with Taylor being heavily used, and they just being able to do whatever they can with him, I think that's going to be huge. And, we saw an enormous season from him in 2021, but the difference was that they just didn't have adequate quarterback play. And so I think these two complement each other very well. If you get the huge year from Jonathan Taylor, 1,500 plus yards from scrimmage and about 15 touchdowns again, I think he gets you to the door, and then it's, maybe Anthony Richardson's presence that gets you through it.
Yeah, and because you took Taylor, obviously I take the layup that is Anthony Richardson for my MVP pick. And really it comes down to, I think Taylor will be more of a consistent presence for the Colts this year. You'll see a lot of high-end play from him. I don't think you'll see much low-end from Jonathan Taylor. When it comes to Richardson, it'll be a little bit more erratic. That you will have some games where it's just not up to standard. You'll have other games where it's really clicking for him and he's just ripping the ball down the field, scoring rushing touchdowns, and looking like this star quarterback that we all know he can be. But I think the Colts obviously go as far as Anthony Richardson takes them this year. I think the potential is out of the stadium when it comes to Richardson. And I'm excited to see what he looks like in a Shane Steichen offense actually designed for him to run with the training wheels taken off. So as long as he can stay healthy this year, come out here, ripping the ball up those seams, doing well on those RPOs and developing as an overall passer, I think he will be the Colts offensive MVP this season. Obviously, again, it's the quarterback. The quarterback is the make or break decision of every single roster. But let's go to Rookie of the Year, Jake. Now, this one is not really much up for debate because there's really only one rookie who's going to get serious snaps this year, and that is A.D. Mitchell. I actually had a bold prediction that we did not make it into the show last night, which was A.D. Mitchell leading the Colts wide receiver room in receiving touchdowns this season, mainly because I love his size, speed combo. I love his ability to win off the line of scrimmage, and I think that he's going to be that big target they go to, especially when you look at the other wide receivers in the room. Like, Pierce has 4 career touchdowns in Indy. Downs has 2, which was last year just the 2. And Pittman has 15 in his career, but his most in a season is 6. His average in a season is less than 4. It's like a little over 3. So as long as Mitchell can hit like 4 or 5 receiving touchdowns this year, I think it's really realistic for him to hit that. But what do you think on A.D. Mitchell? I know that he's obviously our main guy for Rookie of the Year on offense because he's going to be a major contributor. But what do you think his kind of role is this year, and how far do you think he takes it in this rookie season?
Yeah, I think what he shows early in the season, however long Josh Downs is going to be out, will be big, and it will help the Colts decide how they want to use him throughout the season. I mean, just because Josh Downs is back and is your slot receiver doesn't mean they can't get kind of exotic with it after everybody is back. But I think that Mitchell is going to be a big part of what they want to do. You know, they want to have explosives. They want to be vertical. And while we know Alec Pierce can do those things, A.D. Mitchell is kind of that, you've got guys who can win contested catches and 50-50 balls and stuff downfield. But then you've got guys who will not be beaten with the ball in the air. And I think A.D. Mitchell kind of has some of that to him. We saw that in college. But even, throughout camp and OTAs and everything, there are some guys who absolutely take ownership of the ball once it's in the air. And I think he's that. And I think that will lead to some crucial plays. It doesn't have to just be like a 45-yard bomb downfield in the first quarter or whatever. It could be like a 3rd and 13 when they need a play and he picks up 15 yards over the middle of the field, snagging it away from a defender. I think he will come up clutch with plays like that. And I mean, Michael Pittman has been able to do stuff like that throughout his career, but he's one guy. You need multiple guys who can win those tough matchups. And I think it makes a lot of sense for him to be that next guy and really be critical to them coming up with big plays in big situations.
Yeah, for sure. And shout out to Matt Gonsalves. I think we'll have quite a few snaps this year, if history tells us, with the Colts offensive tackles. And also Anthony Gould, who I think will get some offensive snaps, but will certainly be the Rookie of the Year on special teams this year, unless Spencer Schrader is the kicker all year. We never know. We never know with this Colts team. But let's quickly talk about our breakout players for the season on offense. I think there's a lot of good candidates here. One guy I'm going to go with, and I hope I'm not taking whoever you were thinking of here, Jake, but I'm going to go with Drew Ogletree at tight end. I think he's a young tight end who's been pushing for more snaps in that room. And I'm not really saying breakout in terms of like he's going to go for 600 yards receiving this year. Like, I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying breakout in terms of establishing himself as like a Jack Doyle-esque player, in terms of a really good blocker who can be a very versatile blocker in the run game and just is deserving of getting most of the snaps at the position. I think he breaks out into being that tight end 1 for the team this year, or at least blocking tight end 1, and really secure the spot. Because we saw the glimpses last year until the injury and the suspension or the commissioner's list, whatever it was he was put on. We saw all those things happening before his season kind of got derailed a little bit. I think he really turns the corner this year and establishes as a real important piece of this offense, at least in terms of blocking, and maybe with some upside as a pass catcher as well.
I love that pick. And in fact, it was the first person I thought about for all the exact reasons you mentioned. I think he's going to become more consistent, and it's not that he's going to have like some big statistical campaign. It's just that he's going to become a big part of a big consistent presence of the offense. And I'm going to go with Alec Pierce on this one. Mainly just because I think everyone can agree that, you and I are pro Alec Pierce, and we kind of feel like, he's kind of got a raw deal in terms of what his skill set is, and it hasn't matched up. I will say he's underwhelmed, and I think that's the general theme for everybody is he's been very underwhelming. They want to see more. I say he's going to show up and start making more plays now that Anthony Richardson is there. He's got a quarterback that fits his skill set a little more, and maybe he can kind of shake some of the detractors who say he's got bad hands, which I don't think is true, that he can't win those one-on-one matchups, that he's not beating guys downfield. I think we're going to finally see, it come to fruition, some of the reasons the Colts drafted him. Now, I don't think he's going to be long-term more successful as a receiver with the Colts as A.D. Mitchell, but I think we're going to start seeing a lot more positive, notable plays from Alec Pierce. Not to mention, if he just keeps up his positive blocking abilities in between those plays, I mean, he's going to be an asset to have. And it doesn't have to mean he's a star who's getting 700-800 yards receiving. It's just coming up with big plays more consistently. And we saw in the preseason, he's a big-bodied guy. I mean, he's kind of slender, but he's got a big, catch radius. Getting plays over the middle, that could be pretty clutch too.
Yeah, and Shane Steichen and Jim Bob Cooter have been very, very complimentary of his work this offseason and just how he's looked. So, look, we love A.D. Mitchell. We think he's going to have a good role this year for the Colts, but I wouldn't sleep on Alec Pierce either being a consistent part of this Colts offense.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, so coming up in a minute, we're going to look at the defensive side of the ball. Maybe a few more less obvious options on this one. The summer is winding down, but we're still enjoying live events around here in Indy, and there's no better place to get the hookup than at Gametime. Gametime's got a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of ticket options. Coming up soon, Post Malone, that's next week out at Ruoff. Taylor Swift is coming to Lucas Oil Stadium. There's even small shows. Like I'm going to a show by a guy, Evan Honer, in December at the Hi-Fi in downtown Indy. So no matter what you're getting, it's not just like big time, stadium shows that you can get it. And remember, I've told you guys, Indians tickets, that's already cheap, but you get it at Gametime, you get a sweet deal involved in it as well. When you go and get tickets from Gametime, you can see a panoramic view of your seats in the app before you buy them, so that you know that your tickets aren't cheeks before you're actually going to spend money on them. They've got the lowest price guarantee, which means Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find comparable tickets somewhere else for a better price. And then, of course, they've got the Gametime ticket coverage, which means your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it?
Game time, baby. It's game time. And this show is also sponsored by BetterHelp. What's something you'd love to learn? As an adult, do you make time to learn new things as often as you'd like? Or was that lost in childhood? Gardening, a new language, or maybe how to finally be your best friend at bowling? Therapy can help you reconnect your sense of wonder, because your back to school era can come at any age. Guys, I have ADHD. I have not been shy about talking about it, and I pick up a million hobbies a day, a million hobbies a week, and I have 400 half collections of things because I always stop halfway through. So maybe something like therapy can help me reconnect with my ability to continue hobbies until they are finished or at a completed stage. I've always wanted to learn an instrument. I've always wanted to learn sign language. Maybe something like that could be a more productive hobby than spending money on all these records that are hanging up on my wall. We'll see. We'll see what the therapist over at BetterHelp has to say for me. Well, if you guys are thinking of starting therapy just like I am, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, Jake, we're on to the less obvious awards here with the defensive awards for the Indianapolis Colts. Again, this is at a micro level. We're talking about Colts players that could win kind of team awards. You know, we're looking at the defensive MVP, defensive rookie of the year, and defensive breakout player. Now, defensive MVP, I do think there is one obvious guy we both have in mind. for this. He's just been a star for this team for a couple years now. But are you going to go with the obvious answer, Jake, or do you want to mix it up a little bit and have some fun here? If you don't go the obvious, I'll go the obvious, obviously.
I don't think I'm gonna take what you're going with. I'm gonna go with EJ Speed.
Ooh, not at all going with the obvious.
No, so I love the fact that he's the starter from day one. I think he is a big play waiting to happen like all the time. He can get pressure in the backfield. He gets TFLs. He knows how to force a fumble. We could see some interception opportunities crop up for him. But I love the way the guy tracks the ball, especially on, outside runs, on the dump offs and everything. I think he's going to be the guy in the middle of the defense that helps with those splash plays. I do like what Zaire Franklin presents. I think he's a really good box defender, very good against the run. But I just think EJ Speed has a little more of the Shaq Leonard to him in terms of being able to spark that big play when it's needed. Let's not forget, EJ Speed closed out that Browns game last year. It was a couple other factors at play that said no thank you, but EJ called game at the end of that, which would have resulted in the Colts making the playoffs ultimately when you fast forward to the end of the year. So I'm really eager to see EJ Speed over the course of a full year with him being the day one starter.
Yeah, no, EJ Speed, I think that's a great choice. I think he can have a really strong season, but obviously, look, you gave me the layup here. You're giving me, the former first-round pick at defensive tackle, athletic freak, has been with this Colts team for a couple years, and the obvious choice for MVP, and that is Taven Bryan. No,
God.
I almost had you there.
Maybe if he gets some playing time and becomes the MVP, the Nickelodeon, or is it the Nickelodeon valuable player?
I don't know. He gets the Colts the first overall pick is what it is. That makes him the MVP if he plays too many snaps. But no, DeForest Buckner is obviously the guy I was talking about there. Just been a fantastic force for this Colts team for years. The leader of the locker room, the leader on the field. And our boy Kenan Kasenko on Twitter actually was messaging me earlier about how Buckner played over 150 more snaps than anyone else on the defensive line last year. Obviously, you want that to change a little bit this year, get a little bit fewer snaps, but maybe a more fresh and ready to go Buckner is not that doesn't have like the weight of the world on his shoulders, can be even more productive this season. So always expect great things from DeForest Buckner. Rookie of the year, again, the obvious choice here. There's other guys that are going to be rookies that play on defense, like Jalen Carlies at linebacker, but this is Laiatu Latu. Even if Laiatu Latu doesn't live up to our expectations, he's the Colts individual defensive rookie of the year because he's just going to be out there so much. And just the mere fact that he's going to be on the field would give him this award over other guys. But Laiatu Latu, we've talked about a lot on this show. Do you have anything else you want to say about? I know we talked about the top of the show.
No, I mean, I think it's pretty obviously him. You can mention Jalen Carlies a little bit. I mean, Carlies is going to be linebacker 3 or 4, and we may notice him make more splash plays on special teams than defense. I don't know. But Latu, obviously, I keep envisioning in my head 11.5 sacks. Like that number just keeps sticking out to me. But yeah, we've talked about Latu ad nauseum. So this one, there's a lot of ways you could go here. Who's your breakout player for defense?
See, like EJ Speed was a guy coming to mind until you.
I just thought of it too because I put myself on the spot and I was like, EJ would have been a really good breakout player too.
Man, it's tough because like you could say like a Julian Blackmon breaks out to be a Pro Bowler this year because he's been like on the precipice of it for years. And I think that wouldn't be a hard thing to make the case for. But if you're talking about a player going from like a fringe starter to like a consistent starter, I think guys like Juju Brents and Nick Cross make the most sense. Yeah. I'll say Juju Brents. I'll be optimistic about his injury history in recent days and weeks and years when it comes to him. If he can just stay healthy out there, we've seen the flashes. We saw really good reps last year against Calvin Ridley, against DeAndre Hopkins, against other receivers he's played against. I know he didn't have a full camp again this year, but I love the length. I love the size. I love what he can do in zone. I love the tackling. Like, let's get Juju Brents healthy and hopefully he can go up from a low end starter to a consistent, no doubt starter like a Kenny Moore every single season for this Colts team. So maybe this is a little optimistic, but I'm really just hoping that Juju Brents is that breakout player for the Colts this year.
Yeah, I like Juju. I like Nick Cross for those, but I'm going to go with Jalen Jones, I think, for my breakout player. So he's been Mr. Consistency for the Colts. And for the most part, as a rookie, 7th-round rookie last year, he gave them really, really good football. There were a couple warts, but overall, he was definitely an asset for them to have. I think he's going to take the next step. He's always been pretty decent in coverage and has the good length to kind of, smother receivers out of there. But let's just say he picks up the ball skills this year. He gets a couple interceptions, gets more pass deflections. I think just taking care of his part of the field, even if he doesn't get those numbers, just not giving up receptions, not even really being targeted, and being a little more from the shutdown corner vein rather than the ball hawk vein, I would be okay with that, because that's kind of Juju's game a little bit, is the ball production. He gets pass breakups, he can get some picks. But Jones, if he can be a little more of a shutdown guy, I don't care if he gets turnovers. I think we'll continue to see that this year. Because, logically, he's been a healthy player. He's been out on the field a lot. But if you could just expect a little more growth, which seems likely for a guy who was able to play pretty much all year for a 7th-rounder last year, if he takes another step or two, I think he's going to be a pretty good player.
I don't care who it is in the secondary that takes a step, Jake, as long as it's somebody in the secondary takes a step.
They need it.
That's all I care about when it comes to this secondary. It's just anybody. So Nick Cross, Juju Brents, Julian Blackmon, Jalen Jones, heck, even Kenny. If Kenny takes another step, awesome. I don't care. One of these guys take a step and I will be good. But that's all we have for today, guys. Thank you again for always tuning into this episode of Locked On Colts. We love all of our everydayers out there. And before you guys go, if you guys want to become Locked On Colts Insider chat list directly and get that inside scoop, follow the link on our show notes. You could text Jake whenever you want. You get his shower thoughts. It's the greatest thing ever out there. I text him all the time and get those things from Jake. If you guys don't already, though, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on Twitter. We're also on TikTok and Instagram. Again, Jake runs those accounts there. So if you want to see him doing the new TikTok trends, make sure you are following on that channel right there. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube wherever you listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow afternoon.